Hello friends, today we're going to be doing a slightly different type of plant care video. If you couldn't guess by this monstrosity in front of me, I'm going to be talking about the Alocasia Stingray. And I actually grew this plant from a corm that I got back in 2022. So I kind of wanted to take you through this plant's entire journey from tiny corm to this giant beast of a plant that we have now in 2026, as well as talk about its care and how I have gotten it to grow this insanely big. Does that sound good? Fabulous. Before we get into it though, I want to say if you're new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanty content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanty journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some more of my videos and subscribe to my channel. If you are not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate it. Now let's talk about the Alocasia Stingray. The Stingray is a really weird and wonderful alocasia with bright green, really wide lobed leaves that sort of end abruptly before it turns into like a skinny tail shape. I don't know how else to describe it other than it's a tail. It is the tail of the stingray, hence the name. It's got these gorgeous speckled, almost pinky stems as well, and I found it fairly easy to take care of, so it is a great addition to any plant collection. So like I said, I got the Alocasia Stingray as a corm for my birthday in June of 2022. And for some reason, I decided to grow it in sphagnum moss. I don't know why I did that. That's not my sort of normal Alocasia corm growing method. I tend to use things like the shallow puddle method or put it into semi-hydro. These days I've been using a fluval and perlite mixture. Sphagnum moss, not really on the cards for these because I knew I wanted to put it into semi-hydro, and getting sphagnum moss off of roots to go into semi-hydro, not fun. So I'm not exactly sure why I did that method, but I did. And by November, December time of 2022, I had popped it into semi-hydro in a lovely self-watering pot. And another surprise, I didn't put this Alocasia into high humidity conditions. Very weird for me. I tend to put new, like semi-hydroed alocasias into my cabinet, into my pond box, into high humidity conditions. I didn't do that with this one. I had it in my shelves in the office, just out in ambient conditions, which is kind of crazy. Not what I would normally do, but it was absolutely fine for this one. In fact, ever since I put it into semi-hydro, I think when it was in moss, it might have been in the cabinet for like humidity purposes to keep the moss moist. But since I put it into semi-hydro, this one has not ever lived in a humid environment, like more humid than my general home humidity. And I'm not really sure why I did it that way, but I'm glad I did because, I mean, we're here now and I'm not mad at that. From there, it had pretty slow and steady growth throughout 2023. I didn't really talk about it specifically. When I was looking for footage for this video, I couldn't find anything specific, even in like update videos about the Alocasia Stingray. I think I found one where I was showing a bunch of neglected plants, which definitely offered this one some neglect during that time. I'm sure I let it dry out fully. I'm sure I probably could have repotted it sooner, but I didn't do anything to this plant in all of 2023 and most of 2024. The first time I actually found myself doing anything was in October 2024 when I finally decided to up the pot size, which I think was long overdue at that point. And that's when I put it into no drainage in the semi-hydro. And I think it really started to take off after that. By February, it had pretty much entirely filled out the root section of the pot. And by that point, the leaves had started to grow a little bit more mature into that classic stingray shape. When they're little, they don't do the shape that intensely, but as they get bigger, they get more and more stingray-y. And so by February of 2025, we were looking pretty decent, like some very classic stingray leaves, and I loved that. And then in March of 2025, I gave it another repot into the pot it is currently in. It has been in this pot for nearly a year now, and the other major change I made in March was putting it like underneath a downward facing grow light. It was underneath the Soltech Aspect pendant light. It loved that spot. It absolutely ate up the light it was getting. That is a fairly bright light as it is, and so it was getting quite a lot of light from above, and that is when I really started to see this thing size up massively and grow, putting out new leaves, leaf after leaf after leaf, constantly throughout 2025. And I think that is part of the reason why this one sized up so much over 2025, is getting that really good grow light, because I don't think it was necessarily under any major grow lights before that. So it stayed there for about 6 months, getting bigger and bigger. It eventually started to like almost consume that grow light. It was like all up touching it. It was burning itself because it had just gotten so close and was trying to eat up so much of that light that it was giving itself burns. And I finally decided in October it was time for a new spot, and that's when I brought it into the living room here and popped it under the Claria bulbs from Grow Gang, which again is a pendant light and very, 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 very bright. And it again loved that to the point where it was burning its leaves again, because this light is very bright, and so I did have to kind of shift it to not be directly under it, as well as lower the hours of light that the Claria was on, because I think it was just too many hours in the day. And since then I have not had any burning leaves, which is so freaking exciting. And the leaves have just gotten massive. You can't even see the biggest one. This is the biggest one. It is just down in front of you. It has just gotten so big, and it has also produced so many corms in this time, and I've been able to divide those out and give them to so many people. I've really enjoyed sharing the love on this one. I am just so proud of where this plant is now. Like, the size of these leaves is absolutely astounding. Thinking that I grew this from a corm when it had leaves literally this big, and now they are huge. It's just something I am so proud of. I'm sure if you're here watching this video, you know the feeling of pride that you get when you are able to grow a plant from essentially nothing into something big like this. And this is one of these plants for me. I don't have tons in my collection that I feel like that for, but this one is one of them, and I am so glad I was able to get it to this point. So that's the Stingray's journey, and now I'm gonna talk about sort of specific care things about it, like water, light, temperature, potting, whatever, just so if you are interested in growing your Stingray massive like mine, you can hopefully achieve the same results going off of what I have done to care for this one. So, watering, in general, I am an underwaterer, but that kind of gets negated by this being in semi-hydro, and especially no drainage, because growing this way, it will always have some sort of water reservoir at the bottom. Ideally, you don't really want to let it dry out entirely. I can't personally talk about growing this one in soil because I haven't done it. I have only ever grown it in semi-hydro, and that is honestly what I would recommend for your Stingray, as well as any other Alocasia. That is how I've had so much success with them, is through growing in semi-hydro and giving them that constant access to water. I also fertilize with probably every other water or so. It really depends how lazy I'm being, because I do have a tendency to be lazy about it and not put fertilizer in my watering can every single time. I do use houseplant focused fertilizer that is suitable for semi-hydro. Some options are Liquid Gold Leaf, Formulex, and Nurture System 1. All of those are great possibilities. I've used all of those on this plant and it has been fine with them, as long as the fertilizer is okay with semi-hydro. If you're keeping it in semi-hydro, then you should be good. But ideally, I would water with fertilizer every time. I don't, but that's just out of sheer laziness. Light-wise, like I mentioned earlier, grow light from above was a massive game changer for me, and I think that is what allowed it to really get going and growing incredibly in 2025. And I think that is a general thing for a lot of Alocasias, especially these sort of long stem ones, so not the jewel Alocasias. They like to have light from above, and that is how I've found them to grow best. Otherwise, they do grow very much so facing one direction. They will lean, and so if you have grow light from above instead, it will grow upwards and generally stay a little bit more symmetrical, less like front facing, if that makes sense. The environment for this one has been fairly steady throughout its growth. It has just been out in my home, and yes, my home is generally slightly higher humidity. I've got lots of plants, and I live in the UK. It's just a generally humid place. So my home stays around 50–60% humidity all the time. And so it is getting that. But like I mentioned, it hasn't lived in a greenhouse cabinet, so it hasn't been getting those elevated levels of humidity that you might expect an alocasia to want. It's also not had any sort of particular high temperatures. Just average home temperature has been fine. Since I'm comfortable in my house, it is comfortable. So I think the lowest it's gotten is maybe like 18 degrees. Generally, we tend to not keep it that cold in our home. For us, for our cats, and Joe doesn't know it, but for my plants as well. For substrate, I've said it before, but I will say it again, semi-hydro all the way. I would not even consider soil for my stingray or alocasias in general because semi-hydro has just worked so well for it, and I wouldn't change that in a heartbeat. I also think having it in no drainage has been really nice for it, but I feel like having a self-watering pot versus no drainage, as long as you're keeping the water fairly consistent, it doesn't really matter, and you can kind of do it either way. The one thing I wish I had changed about growing this plant was potentially repotting it sooner. I think repotting it maybe once a year could have helped it achieve this sort of size earlier. I didn't repot it for like nearly 2 years at the beginning of its life, and I think if I had repotted it sooner, it probably could have gotten bigger sooner. I'm not mad at how I've done it. I'm not, because it has gotten me this plant and it's fine, but I would say probably check on it at least once a year to see if it does need a repot earlier, and you could potentially achieve slightly faster results. Up to you. You could be lazy like me and it might just turn out fine. And propagation wise, this one has grown loads of corms in the time I've had it, and I have separated them out here and there to give to other people. I've absolutely loved sharing this with as many people as possible. I still have some corms in here, but I don't know how many more I'm gonna get rid of because in theory, this is just one big plant. The rest are all corms down the bottom, so it could be cool if I had multiple big plants in a pot. So I might keep some of these in here, but the others at some point I will remove and pass them on to share the love a little bit more. So there we go. That is everything I know about the Alocasia Stingray and how I have brought it to this beautiful point here. I absolutely love this plant. I think it's so fun and funky, and I hope you are able to grow yours as well as I've been able to grow mine. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other plants you'd like me to talk about in the future. Do you have an Alocasia Stingray? How is it doing? Let me know. Has this video helped? Tell me down below, and subscribe for more. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to keep growing. Bye!